It was an eerie day as ever on the remote planet of Dagobah. Two lightsabers clashed between Jedi, blue striking green. The green saber belonged to none other than Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, and the blue Jedi Knight Leia Skywalker. Leia had pressed the attack on Luke, who redirected the blow and sabers into trees nearby. A glowing figure watched from above them. Good. But you need to be mindful of the living force around you. This planet is strong in the Force, but try not to disturb it, Force Ghost Anakin had said to them. The Skywalker twins had gone to search for Force-rich planets to complete their training post the Jedi Civil War, when they came across the Dagobah system, and immediately felt the connection to it. Their father, Anakin Skywalker, had no problem appearing as a Force ghost in a Force-rich world such as Dagobah, and from time to time, Masters Obi-Wan and Qui Gon and other deceased Jedi Masters of old would appear to give them pointers as well. Following the Jedi Council Civil War decades prior, the galaxy was in an era of mostly peace. Grandmaster Ahsoka Tano led the effort to rebuild the Jedi Order and help to stabilize the Republic. Luke and Leia, full of promise and potential, lacked the proper training in the time during the war, so they had to spend most of their time training and completing various diplomatic and other missions for the Council in these past decades or so. It was not until they felt they had reached a plateau of their Force knowledge and strength that they asked Ahsoka for leave to train and further their understanding of the Force. Ahsoka, knowing that feeling of being explorative in youth, happily obliged and allowed them this freedom. This training lasted roughly half a year, which wouldn't be a crazy long time in terms of normal Jedi training, but on a Force-rich planet with Force Ghost instructors, these months were worth decades of knowledge. Trust your instincts. Let the Force guide you, Force Ghost Anakin said. He stretched out his arms and pointed at Leia and Luke's hearts. Within you, the blood of the Chosen One resides. I never asked to be what I was, but ultimately the Force chose me. And now that I'm gone, you two must continue to keep the balance. Father, I never asked for this, Luke said. Anakin put a Force Ghost arm around his shoulder. I know, son, but sometimes you have to put your wants below the galaxy's needs. What would you have us do? Leia asked. Watch. Wait. Listen. Feel the Force flow all around you. When the time comes, you will know what to do. And remember, you are not alone. Anakin finished and walked into the darkness towards the smiling Force ghost Qui Gon Jin. You have done well, Anakin, Qui Gon said. Qui Gon now put a shoulder on Anakin, and they walked off and disappeared into space itself. It was deep into their training on Dagobah when Luke entered a certain cave, which felt stronger in the Force compared to even rest of the planet. Unbeknownst to our heroes, this was none other than the Cave of Evil. In this cave, Luke saw many things, most of which were hard to decipher. But what Luke saw that stuck out to him most was a blue humanoid being with scarlet red eyes. There was no doubt in Luke's mind that this was a sign of a new threat coming to the galaxy. This mysterious blue-faced figure had to have a part in it. In the coming days, the pair of Luke and Leia wrapped up their training on Dagobah. Luke shared what he saw to Leia in the cave, and they realized that they must take their findings to Ahsoka and the rest of the Jedi Council. The pair said their goodbyes to their temporary home on Dagobah and set a course to Coruscant, jumping to hyperspace. In the Jedi Council chambers, it had seemed that Luke and Leia's timing could not have been better. Ships are disappearing in the Outer Rim. Many of them infrequently, Ahsoka said. Who could be doing this? Is there a trend to the ships that are disappearing? Leia asked. Most of these cargo ships are holding precious metals and advanced electronics useful to the Republic fleet, Jedi Master Cal Kestis said. But who could be doing this? The Sith are gone and the galaxy is at peace, Ahsoka said. Luke finally spoke up. The galaxy might not be what we know. In my time at Dagobah, I learned many things, one of which I believe to have been the future. A blue-faced man with red eyes conquering the galaxy. Murmurs sparked in the Jedi Council. You speak of a Chiss, Ahsoka said. Preposterous. The Chiss are a legendary tale, not thought to exist in anything but legends, a Jedi Master said. There is some truth to that, Ahsoka said. However, Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker, a close friend of mine, once spoke of me during the Clone Wars, of someone described to be the same as this blue-faced individual with the red eyes. Anakin even said that this being was extremely smart and tactical. If these visions you had are true, and the Chiss are truly our enemies, the galaxy is in danger, Ahsoka said. Then we have no choice but to take these claims more seriously. The galaxy cannot suffer another full-scale war, Cal Kestis said. Months passed, and it was almost as if the enemy heard the Jedi Council's conversation. The Jedi were beginning to doubt the Chiss' involvement, as there had been not any incursions since that conversation. That was until on Miko, there was a report that a score of precious kyber crystals were stolen. Luke and Leia were the Jedi Knights sent to investigate the situation. The duo emerged from hyperspace and landed their dual Jedi-class fighters on a nearby rundown platforms on the surface of Miko. They landed about a half a league from the Hammer Tong facility, which was now an ancient research facility once utilized by Geonosian scientists, who conducted research on various metals and crystals, including kyber crystals. While Megiddo was known for its kyber crystals, the truth was that most of them had been mined out and were being held at this facility. The pair of twin Jedi observed their surroundings to be run down as they continued to be closer to their destination. A faint smokestack could be observed coming from the facility from afar. It wasn't long before they found a couple dead bodies of Republic Guardsmen who were posted here to protect this old facility. This doesn't look like the work of a blaster, Leia said. No, Luke said as he examined the body closer, unveiling some blunt damage. It looks like these men were killed with blunt force. R2, call us in and report to the Jedi Council we found the Republic Guardsmen. You stay at the ship. You're going in. The pair continued and finally entered the rundown facility. It didn't take long to find more damage across the old place. They found scorch marks on a broken down blast door, which evidently had led to the storage room. It was empty. I have a bad feeling about this, Leia said. Out of nowhere, a creature came flying towards them, attempting to whack them with a staff. He was fast, faster than them. Hand-to-hand combat ensued, and it was clear that this creature, who appeared to be a Nogri, was a master of martial arts. They didn't have time to pull out their lightsabers, and the creature wouldn't give them the space, let alone the time to do so. Finally, Luke sent a wave of force kinesis at the enemy, and the pair started a run out of the facility. The oppressor was close behind, though, and even with their force speed, keeping up. Finally, when they were outside and more in the opening, the pair would no longer run and turn to face their enemy. They ignited their lightsabers, but this didn't seem to affect their oppressor's plans. The Nogri, Ryuk, pressed forward, evading the fast Jedi blades with even faster and more nimble movements. They continued to get berated with physical damage. It wasn't looking good until finally Luke had enough. He reached out with the Force and stopped the creature in his place. Who sent you here? What do you want? Luke said with a commanding voice. Ryuk made no reply, only smirking. Luke was not entertained by this. He pointed his lightsaber closer to the creature's neck and asked again, Who sent you here? Ryuk laughed and said one word. Thrawn. And in the moment after, Ryuk took out the opportunity of shock to do a backflip, kicking Luke in the face while evading his blade, and using the force of the kick to push off of Luke and make for his escape. He'd also laid out a smokescreen bomb. By the time Luke was helped up by Leia, the creature was gone. The pair returned to their ships. Although mostly in defeat, they did at least learn one important piece of information. They got back to their ships and utilized long-range communication to report back their findings to Ahsoka and the rest of the council. As they made the reveal that their worst fears had been realized, and Thrawn was truly out and about, they saw a ship in the distance take off. This left their conversation cut short as they hopped into their Jedi starfighters to pursue.
As Luke and Leia sped after Ryuk's ship, they could feel the tension in the Force. This encounter with the Nogari assassin and the revelation of Thrawn's involvement had set off alarm bells. The sky had darkened as the twins hurtled through the Miko atmosphere, weaving around sharp ridges and the frozen debris in hot pursuit of their target. But just as they closed in, the ship entered hyperspace, disappearing in an instant. Luke and Leia exchanged glances from their starships, disappointed but having to move on. "We need to go back to Coruscant and inform Ahsoka and the rest of the Council," Luke said. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council held an emergency meeting. Masters Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, and others debated the situation in hushed tones as Luke and Leia shared their harrowing encounter with the Nogri assassin, and as well what they had learned of the true name of their enemy, Thrawn. This so-called Thrawn, or whatever you call him, his intentions are clear, Cal Kestis said grimly. He's amassing resources, and now with the kyber crystals in his possession, he may have the means to weaponize them. Ahsoka's brow furrowed. The Chiss aren't just any strategists. If he's using kyber crystals, he's likely building something catastrophic on multiple levels. We must locate him. But how? It was then Luke that spoke up. "I think I know how and where we might find him." Everyone in the room, including Leia, turned to him with astonished looks. "During my time at Dagobah, in the Cave of Evil, I had dreams and visions of a place cloaked in darkness. I could sense an immense concentration of the Force, though it was dark, and it echoed in the darkness. And since then, at times I've felt this darkness call to me. I think if I reach out to the Force far enough, I might be able to sense where this is coming from, this dark place." After some murmuring, ultimately Ahsoka spoke up. "Well, young Snips, it's not exactly perfect, but it's something. We'll mobilize the Jedi Order and our forces. There's just too much at stake. Prepare yourselves, but be wary. Thrawn will be expecting us." At this time, Cal Kestis was a very involved Jedi Master of the Council. He was even more so invested now that his wife, Merrin, had just had their second child. He had no interest in seeing the galaxy fall into a downward spiral in a large-scale war, nor any interest in raising his kids. Cal Kestis would do whatever he needed to do to help contribute to stop this conflict. Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, Luke and Leia, and the rest of the Jedi led a large fleet of Jedi starships and Republic cruisers into the unknown territories, following Luke's Force-driven sense of direction to that darkness. Days passed in tense silence as they combed through the star systems, until finally Luke felt a greater grasp of the darkness, pulling him closer. To be able to get closer to this connection, he utilized his Force senses in a way to make consecutive jumps to hyperspace based off of the directions that this darkness would call to him, just getting closer each time. And unbeknownst to them and the rest of the Jedi, this is how Force-sensitive Chiss would travel without the use of navigation computers, but the Force itself. Finally, they locked on the planet. In the dark side senses of all the Jedi were present now. Many weaker Jedi and younger Jedi started to vomit at the sheer level of the darkness. They descended into the dark clouds of the planet. Once they got past the clouds, they were surprised to get met by enemy cruisers who opened fire on them. The ships had the look of Mandalorian star cruisers. A massive battle over the surface of this mysterious and dark planet erupted. Dogfights ensued, and Jedi strike teams landed on the surface. There was 2 battles at once going on, one in the air and one on the ground of this dark planet. The planet was full of mud, and it was just dirty and dark, and the mud got everywhere. Blue, yellow, green lightsabers clashed against Beskar steel, along with other Chiss warriors fighting against the Jedi and Republic soldiers. It was all-out war between the surface and the ground. Luke and Leia fought with precision and synergy, moving as one through the battlefield. Dread filled the air, and Luke had no choice but to follow where this source of dread and darkness was coming from. Somewhere beyond this dark battle, there was something even more sinister in the works. As Luke and Leia pressed deeper into Thrawn's fortress, a cold, eerie silence replaced the sounds of combat. Ahsoka and Cal Kestis led the forces against the Mandalorians in the meantime, giving the opportunity for Luke and Leia to track down their true enemy. They ultimately came across a massive chamber that was lined with kyber crystal shards that glue faintly with a slight red hue. At the end of this great room, in a throne, sat Thrawn himself, hands crossed. "Ah, Skywalkers," he greeted, his voice calm and collected. "I had wondered when you would finally arrive." Leia's grip tightened on her lightsaber. "This ends here, Thrawn. The galaxy won't fall to your tyranny. Thrawn chuckled, his red eyes gleaming with amusement. I never needed the galaxy or the Republic, people, only its resources. With the snap of his fingers, two massive doors slid open from behind him, revealing a shadowy figure. As he stepped into the dim light, Luke and Leia's hearts sunk. This figure, surrounded by darkness, was none other than a young Anakin Skywalker. You see, this was Thrawn's clone, a version of their father, but imbued with darkness. You see, Thrawn had met Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars back on the planet of Batuu. There they found each other mutually interested allies against a CIS factory. Thrawn, seeing Anakin's skill and prowess while he was with him, couldn't help but, when given the opportunity, take a sample of his hair for DNA for later. He had never been next to a being with so much power. And well, after many years of research and studying, they were able to clone his being. Meet the ultimate weapon of destruction, Thrawn said with a malicious smile. The clone ignited a crimson saber. His gaze of yellow Sith eyes burned with the darkness within him, devoid of mercy. Luke and Leia exchanged looks. They had trained for just about anything, but nothing could have prepared them to face the very image of their father. The clone Anakin wasted no time, lunging at Luke and Leia with a ferocity that was both precise and brutal. His lightsaber clashed against theirs, filling the room with flashes of red, green, and blue. Leia leaped back, narrowly evading a powerful strike as Luke countered with a powerful force push of his own. The clone twisted midair, landing gracefully, a cruel smile on his face as he moved in again, relentless. The battle was intense. Potential and skill were on full display as a deadly dance of the twins combined their strengths against the clone. They channeled their powers together and tried to lean into the lessons that the Force Ghost Anakin and others had taught them. But the clone was unyielding, each move mirroring that of the irreplaceable and legendary skill of Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker. You can't win, the clone Anakin said. I'll never surrender, Luke said back. You are not my father. The clone only smirked, his voice a chilling echo. Your father is gone. I am what remains. The words stung, but Luke shook his head and pushed on. He centered himself in his ideals, letting the Force guide his movements. Together, Luke and Leia managed to land a grazing strike, forcing the clone to retreat momentarily. Watching from his throne, Thrawn's expression remained calm. He was prepared for every outcome. With a subtle gesture, he activated control panel, and the walls shifted to reveal a giant, transparent container filled with kyber crystals infused with reactors. The crystals began to glow, their energies growing dangerously volatile. You may have stalled my clone, Thrawn called out, but soon this entire planet will produce an energy so destructive it will cripple the galaxy and bend it to my will. Luke and Leia's focus shifted from the clone to the reactor behind them, but they didn't have a moment to react as the clone Anakin renewed his attack now with more intensity. This clone didn't feel pain. Leia looked at Luke, full of determination. We have to stop this, or the whole galaxy is going to be in trouble. They worked together to use the Force to push back the clone Anakin. But as they moved towards the reactors, Thrawn revealed now another challenge for them to overcome. Ryuk, a Nogri, about a half dozen Nogri assassins. Now, they were at a disadvantage between the assassins and even a couple of elite Mandalorian warriors and the clone Anakin against them. The odds were stacked against them. As the battle raged, Luke and Leia struggled. The clone Anakin was fast, and they were being overwhelmed by the countless enemies now. They had to dodge blaster bolts from the Mandalorians and melee attacks from the Nogri assassins. They were at their limits. Things were looking grim. And just as it looked like things were going to take a turn for the worse, a soft but unmistakable light blue light shimmered into the room. It was their father. The real Anakin. Anakin's Force Ghost appeared, standing tall between them, between Luke and Leia and his dark counterparts. The room fell silent now, and there was a pause. Blaster bolts went through Anakin's Force Ghost, obviously doing nothing. Thrawn now no longer shared a calm look, but an angry and agitated look. Luke, Leia, Anakin's voice resonated with them. You are not alone. Draw the Force within inside you, and let's do this. Luke and Leia felt a surge of energy as Anakin extended his hand outward, channeling the pure essence of the Force itself into them. His presence alone seemed to weaken the hold of darkness in the room and the planet, lifting the atmosphere. The twins rose to their feet, their strength renewed. Anakin's clone, shaken, but still was resolute, snarled and launched himself at the pair again with fierce intensity. But now the twins were prepared. Luke and Leia moved with perfect synchronization, weaving around each other, bolstered by their father's Force Ghost abilities. Their sabers were a blur of blue and green. Anakin stood at their side, using the Force as well to block blows from the assassins and Mandalorians, assisting them. Don't bend it. Feel. Let the Force flow through you, Anakin instructed. Luke and Leia closed their eyes momentarily, allowing them to be fully attuned to the Force. When they opened them, they moved with renewed precision. Their attacks now swift and even more coordinated than before. The clone was now struggling to keep up, till finally he was knocked to his feet by the twins. Why do you fight? Anakin asked his clone softly, in a curious voice almost. This darkness has twisted you, but it doesn't have to define you. The clone hesitated, his saber faltering, the rage in his eyes beginning to waver. But Thrawn's voice, the voice of the clone's master, spoke up, Fight, or you are nothing. The clone's eyes hardened to the Sith yellow once more. Force Ghost Anakin would not have it. He placed out his hand and sent a channel of Force healing through the clone, who fell to his knees at the feet of the real Force Ghost Anakin. And Anakin said, You are free. Release yourself. Through the Force, there is peace. As he spoke these words, and they resonated with the clone, who seemed to understand them, a faint shimmer of light appeared around him. He looked up to the real Anakin, and in that moment, he disappeared. Luke seemed to have caught a smile a moment before the clone disappeared into the Force itself. The clone was out of the fight, but the battle wasn't over. Thrawn got up from his chair, veiled in irritation. He unveiled a lever and activated this switch, and the kyber crystals began to start glowing even more fiercely now, looking to overload. Even with your victory here, you will not escape, he declared, his voice cold. This facility, though I had greater plans for it, will serve as a beacon of power that will reshape the galaxy, even if it costs me my own life. The Chiss Ascendancy will fill the power void left when all of you and the wretched Jedi are gone. He intends to blow himself up, and all of us, Leia said. The reactors were not looking good, and Anakin's Force Ghost turned to his children. Go to the control room. You can still stop this. Luke and Leia raced through the facility, through blaster fire and Mandalorian guards. Finally, they got to the back wiring in the control center, where the inputs were truly happening, causing the mass acceleration of the kyber crystals to implode. Just as they fought against the initial guards and were going to deactivate the programs, Thrawn and Ryuk now reappeared, and they were surrounded by Mandalorian elite troopers. But it wasn't enough. Still synergized with Anakin's Force Ghost powers enlightening them, they let out a force wave of Force paralysis so powerful that it froze everyone in a 100-meter radius, unable to take action. They were only able to do this between the combined might of Anakin's Force Ghost Chosen One powers and their own Chosen One's blood flowing through them. And this gave them the time they needed to deactivate the self-destruct sequence. At the same time, they incapacitated the rest of the guards and were left with just Thrawn. It's over, Thrawn. Surrender, Luke said. Realizing his plans had truly failed for real, Thrawn got to his knees and pleaded with them. Wait! There is a greater enemy of the galaxy brewing in the deep spaces. You need me. Luke deactivated his saber. The galaxy will find balance, Thrawn. With or without you, the Force will guide us. After arresting Thrawn, They rendezvoused with Ahsoka and the rest of the Jedi leaders who had wrapped up the battle there. Though there were heavy losses, they prevented a major disaster once again from spreading darkness throughout the galaxy. With a final glance at the twins, and with his arms behind his back, Thrawn straightened himself up, composed even in his defeat. Luke and Thrawn's eyes met as the once formidable Chiss Grand Admiral Thrawn was taken into custody. The battle on this dark planet was over, and already the air seemed to be cleaner. With the darkness enshrouding the planet ceasing, it began to snow. Anakin's Force Ghost appeared one more time before Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka. He looked at all of them with pride. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You found balance and were successful in saving the galaxy. I'm proud of you both. And you too, Snips." Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka nodded, tears running down their eyes. They shared a hug through the Force until it was time for Anakin to return to the netherworld of the Force. Back on Coruscant, the surviving Jedi gathered to give the full report to the council that wasn't around and prepare a report to the Galactic Senate. Once again, peace was preserved. The Skywalker legacy, now carried on by Luke and Leia, was one of hope, peace, and resilience. The galaxy had been saved yet again by the will of the Force and the Chosen One's blood. And as Luke and Leia looked ahead to the city skyline sunset on Coruscant, they knew they would be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun finally set, Force ghosts consisting of Obi-Wan, Qui Gon Jin, and Anakin Skywalker smiled back at them, and then disappeared forever, being at peace, knowing well that the galaxy was in the right hands. There would always be hope to those in the world who put their faith in the Force.